everybody, Uncle Rich here for Who's Telling the Truth. Guys, today is August 7th, 2017. This is show 182, and the name of the show is Tucker. And guys, now we're going to do a show in honor of Tucker Carlson, who does a show, who's taken over for Bill O'Reilly at the 8 o'clock hour, and he's now Uncle Joey's hero. And guys, there are times when we both watch Tucker together, and then we Facebook each other. But tonight we're going to play a clip from Tucker, and I want to thank him for this clip because, you know, on this show, we surround ourselves with question marks. And we always want you to be critical thinkers. Oh, what's going on? Judy, you all right? Judy's playing with the cameras, so we're trying to have fun, but this is our first go-round with it. Whoa, I'm getting dizzy, Judy. All right? All right, so anyway, guys, what we want to do on the first clip on this show is I want you to watch the clip, and I want you to pay close attention, and I want you to think about what's missing. And this is the critical point. This is why we surround ourselves with the question marks, and we always ask that one question, which we'll get to in a minute. But guys, I want you to look at this clip. It's only a 2-minute clip. I want you to be a critical thinker, and I want you, to be a truth detective and to be a truth doctor and to think about what's missing. So Judy, let's have clip 00, please.
Like in his previous film, An Inconvenient Truth, Gore warns about imminent planetary catastrophe if everybody doesn't start using less energy and throwing off less carbon. We've got some inconvenient truths of our own. A new paper points out that Gore's personal home in Nashville, Tennessee, consumes 21 times as much electricity as a typical American home. Can that be true? We weren't sure, so we asked Drew Johnson to come. He's a senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research. He wrote that paper, and he joins us now. Drew, it's hard to believe that someone who cares as deeply about the fate of the Earth as Al Gore does could personally own a home that burns that much electricity. How can that be?
How can it be, Drew?
Well, it makes you wonder if he actually believes what he's saying. I mean, this is a guy who has not only this home that burns more electricity in 1 year than the average American burns in their home in 21 years, but he also has 2 other homes on top of it. And here's a guy who's basically exploited concerns about the environment to make $300 million and win the Nobel Prize. So it makes you wonder what his real agenda is.
You know, I remember in the 80s we were all upset when a series of televangelists got into sex scandals. And they were in the pulpit telling you not to do X, Y, or Z, and then they got caught doing it. And they were appropriately humiliated, and they were in tears, and they had to leave the public stage for a while. Why do the same rules not apply to this hypocrite?
I wonder the same thing, because just like a Jimmy Swaggart had to distance himself from Christians, environmentalists should be the most furious. We on the right, the libertarians, the conservatives, we can sit and make fun of this guy, but the people who he represents, and basically he is a religious prophet for the religion of environmentalism, and he doesn't walk the walk. I mean, he expects people to walk to work, ride their bike to work, hang their clothes out on a line rather than using a dryer. And this is a guy who won't take the steps in his own life to reduce his own energy consumption. And some months his energy consumption is 34 times the average American. So we're talking about it's unbelievable, yeah.
A liberal friend of mine had dinner with him a couple of years ago, and he literally talked about global warming during the meal, and then he got into an SUV and went out to Dulles Airport and flew private back home. And my friend was like a sincere environmentalist, was like, really? How can you do that? But I guess he's a false prophet. Drew, thank you so much for coming on tonight and verifying that that's true. We never stop being surprised on this show. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's about it for us tonight.
Guys, what was missing? Come on, think about it. What was... let's work in our soundboard and he shouted out a utility bill. That's it. What's missing is evidence. So you're saying and guys, we say this all the time, question everything. So anyway, so what's missing? Evidence. But, you know, they bring this guy, Drew Johnson on, and he's a senior fellow. And, you know, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. And I'm saying, where did they get this guy from? But, you know, you're saying he's using 21 times the amount of power than an American house. What, did somebody leave the coffee pot on? You know, I mean, does Gore have 21 more pools than the average house? You know, does Gore use 21 times the power? What is he, growing pot in his house? And, you know, he's got all those grow bulbs. I mean, the way you make it sound, you know, Gore uses so much power you could see his house from space. You know, can you imagine the guys in the space shuttle? Hey, what's that? You know, is that just an aurora borealis? No. Gore just turned on his back lights. Oh, okay. But, you know, 21 times more power than the average, 34 times more power. So, guys, so what does your buddy Uncle Rich do? So Uncle Rich Googles it. And what does he find? Judy, can you bring up still number 2, please? Guys, when I Googled it, this is what I came up with. And I looked, and Drew Johnson works for the National Policy of Analysis. And guys, Judy, come back to me. So guys, yours truly Googles it. I see that National Policy of Analysis, and I said to myself, well, this looks official. This must be the real bill. And without really delving into it, I said, well, this must prove that he's using 21 times the amount of power. So let's go a little bit deeper into the clip. And Judy, let's do, I hope I didn't screw this up. Let's do clip number 1 now, please. Video number 1.
Like in his previous film, An Inconvenient Truth, Gore warns about imminent planetary catastrophe if everybody doesn't start using less energy and throwing off less carbon. We've got some inconvenient truths of our own. A new paper points out that Gore's personal home in Nashville, Tennessee, consumes 21 times as much electricity as a typical American home. Can that be true? We weren't sure, so we asked Drew Johnson to come. He's a senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research. He wrote that paper, and he joins us now. Drew, it's hard to believe that someone who cares as deeply about the fate of the Earth as Al Gore does could personally own a home that burns that much electricity. How can that be?
How can that be? So once again, guys, Judy, like I said, I pursued it, and I came up with that same still with the national analysis. If you could bring up that still number 2 again, Judy. But then we're gonna, no, you went past it, but you're on number, oh yeah, we're all getting all mixed up here. All right, so we got the national policy, and now we're gonna go to video number 3, Judy, and this is what makes you wonder. So video number 3, please.
Well, it makes you wonder if he actually believes what he's saying. I mean, this is a guy who has not only this home that burns more electricity in 1 year than the average American burns in their home in 21 years, but he also has 2 other homes on top of it. And here's a guy who's basically exploited concerns about the environment to make $300 million and win the Nobel Prize. So it makes you wonder what his real agenda is.
You know, I remember in the...
Guys, it made me wonder. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. Maybe I got this wrong. maybe I didn't look into it deeply enough. So guys, what I did was I went in a step further, and Judy, if you can bring up still number 04 now. And guys, I looked up the National Center for Public Policy Research, and guess what it is? It's a conservative think tank. That's right. And let's see, over on the right side, I got to delete these. I got stuff that's covering up so I can read it. But guys, it says the National Center for Public Policy Research, founded in 1982, is a self-described conservative think tank in the United States. Its founding CEO is Amy Ridauer, who serves as chairwoman. So Judy, come back to me. So guys, it's a conservative think tank. And what's a conservative think tank for? It's for one thing and one thing only. It's to promote the Republican agenda. So how do they do this, and how do they trick the simple folk like Uncle Joey? They make it devolve into a religion of evangelism, so that they think it's like a belief system, like a religion. So Judy, let's have clip number 5, please.
It makes you wonder what his real agenda is.
You know, I remember in the 80s, we were all upset when a series of televangelists got into sex scandals. They were in the pulpit telling you not to do X, Y, or Z, and then they got caught doing it. And they were appropriately humiliated, and they were in tears, and they had to leave the public stage for a while. Why do the same rules not apply to this hypocrite?
I wonder the same thing, because just like a Jimmy Swaggart had to distance himself from Christians, environmentalists should be the most furious. We on the right, the libertarians, the conservatives, we can sit and make fun of this guy, but the people who he represents, and basically he is a religious prophet for the religion of environmentalism, and he doesn't walk the walk. I mean, he expects people to walk to work, ride their bike to work, hang their clothes out on a line rather than using a dryer. And this is a guy who won't take the steps in his own life to reduce his own energy consumption. And some months his energy consumption is 34 times the average American. So we're talking about...
It's hard to believe.
It's unbelievable, yeah.
It is unbelievable, isn't it, guys? And this is the way they do it, and this is how Fox News does it, so that people like Uncle Joey sit there and they nod their head and they say, yeah, Al Gore's house uses 24 times the electricity as anybody, 31 times on big months. And guys, they just repeat it. They never question anything. And why did he do it? Because they're talking about the religious prophet. Al Gore is the religious prophet, and he's preaching the religion of environmentalism. Guys, there's one thing about global warming and science. You can't trick a thermometer. You can't bribe them. Satellites are programmed to do one thing, collect data. That's it. They don't ask the data if you're Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat. Guys, it's all very simple. It really is. It's called facts. Something that Uncle Joey and the Republican Party refuses to believe. But guys, the one thing that we always talk about on this show, and that's why when we were talking about evidence, the one thing that we always say is be specific and cite your sources. And this next clip that we're going to play takes it one step further, because now we start to talk about a burden of proof. And guys, we haven't talked about this much, but this makes so much sense. And the reason why it does is because a lot of people think because something can't be proven wrong, that it's a fact. Well, guys, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And this guy, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know who he is. I don't know where he's from. He was on Facebook. I clicked on him, and I tell you, I just love the guy's logic and reason, and it's something that'll push Uncle Joey over the edge. So this is one of the reasons we want to play this clip. So Judy, can we have clip number 6, please?
What if I were to tell you that 400 miles below the surface of Saturn, there live giants? These giants telepathically communicate with me every single night. Oh, you don't believe me? Okay, then prove me wrong. No, you don't believe me. I need you to prove to me that giants do not live 400 miles below the surface of Saturn and that they do not communicate with me telepathically every single night. Obviously, I'm kidding, but that's a little frustrating, right? It would also be very time consuming. If I were to throw out a claim and then tell you that you have to prove it wrong simply because you don't believe it, wouldn't that be a burden on everyone? Well, what if that was the way things were done? What if things would be called a fact simply because they couldn't be proven false? So if someone makes a ridiculous claim, simply because you cannot prove that claim false, it would go down as fact. So just imagine reading an encyclopedia filled with facts, but not really facts, right? Filled with facts that could not be proven wrong, ideas, beliefs that could not be proven wrong, so they went down as fact. That would be really frustrating, right? Well, to save us from all of that, we have a really useful tool. It is called the burden of proof. What is the burden of proof? What is the obligation to prove an assertion? If you make a claim or an assertion, you are then held responsible to prove that claim or assertion. To say that the person who does not believe in your claim should prove that your claim is not real is unrealistic, and it's impossible. Just imagine this. I just asked you to prove to me that giants do not live 400 miles below the surface of Saturn and that they do not communicate with me telepathically. We know that you have no technology to be able to begin to prove me wrong. And because you cannot prove me wrong, that now means that you have to accept my belief? Not at all. If you are going to present something as a claim, you're going to need evidence. And this right here is accepted everywhere. Everywhere. In a courtroom, if you're going to try and prove something, you're going to need evidence. If someone just made an outrageous claim about you, and they came and picked you up and had you standing in the courtroom and no witnesses were there, it was just only simply because someone made a claim, wouldn't you feel that was unfair? I'm sure you would. What if you could not prove that person's claim to be false? What if you had no alibi? You had no one that could validate where you were. And simply because you could not prove that you were someone else, now, no evidence was found on you, no fingerprints, no nothing. But because you couldn't prove where you were or prove that you weren't where the crime was, you're now held convicted. Would that be fair? You see, beliefs cannot be held that way. Now, here's what happens. If a religious person tells you their belief, and their belief is in a narrative, and if you don't believe in that narrative, they want you to prove that that narrative or the characters of that narrative are not true. But that is not your responsibility. The responsibility lies with the person who believes in such a claim. But here's what happens. When you say, I don't believe in that, they say, be more open-minded. But is that really open-minded? If they tell you to believe their claim with no evidence, is that open-minded? Actually, that would be closed-minded. For a person to be skeptic is in no way saying that they're not open-minded. They're simply wanting evidence before they commit to believing such a thing. This is not closed-minded. It's called being careful. It's called critical thinking. This is something that every single person should have access to be able to critically think. Without these tools, you'd always end up in a world of trouble. So you can't expect someone to merely believe in your claim simply because they cannot prove that it didn't exist, like such a character as Jesus Christ. Because you can't prove that a person or a character like Jesus never existed, we must now accept that this character did exist. Is that fair? Because if I go to that same exact religious person who believes this character did exist and tell them to prove to me that my aliens that live 400 miles below the surface of Saturn don't exist, we're in the same situation, right? Does that mean that now they have to believe what I believe? Of course not. So if you have a belief and a claim, please understand that if you're going to accept someone to believe that claim, you have to understand that you have to be able to present evidence, right? If you try and present a claim to me not believing in your claim is not being offensive to you. It is not a slap in your face. It is simply saying, I do not have enough evidence yet to commit to this belief. So please understand, if you're telling me a belief and I don't believe it, that doesn't mean I'm being disrespectful to you or your belief, frankly. It simply means that I don't have enough evidence to commit to your belief. Don't be offended. Now let's talk about lack of knowledge, because this is another thing that seems to be really heavy.
Listen, let's stick with believe. And guys, I'll tell you, I used to believe everything. I mean, from God to UFOs to Bigfoot to ghosts, you named it, I believed it. That's the way I was. Now you got to prove everything to me. And it's more of a perception. You know, it's how you perceive things. And the next clip we're going to show you, and I don't want to throw Judy off because we're out of number sync here. The next clip is going to be number 10. But I want you to see, and I'm sure, guys, he's got to be a Republican senator or a Republican congressman, because listen to his perceptions on health care. And listen how this woman straightens him out. But she does it so nicely, and so she does it with such class, and she gives him the old bada bing without even hitting him. So Judy, let's have some fun with clip number 10, please.
How many Canadian patients on a waiting list die each year? Do you know?
I don't, sir, but I know that there are 45,000 in America who die waiting because they don't have insurance at all.
Whoa, whoa.
Dr. Martin, in your testimony, you note that Canadian doctors exiting the public system for the private sector has had the effect of increasing waiting lists for patients seeking public health care. Why are doctors exiting the public system in Canada?
Thank you for your question, Senator. If I didn't express myself in a way that to make myself understood, I apologize. There are no doctors exiting the public system in Canada, and in fact, we see a net influx of physicians from the United States into the Canadian system over the last number of years. What I did say was that the solution to the wait time challenge that we have in Canada, which we do have a difficult time with waits for elective medical procedures, does not lie in moving away from our single-payer system towards a multi-payer system. And that's borne out by the experience of Australia. So Australia used to have a single-tier system, and in the 1990s moved to a multiple payer system where private insurance was permitted. And what they found was, in those areas of Australia where private insurance was being taken up and utilized, waits in the public system became longer.
What do you say to an elected official who goes to Florida and not the Canadian system to have a heart valve replaced?
It's actually interesting because, in fact, the people who are the pioneers of that particular surgery are in Toronto at the Peter Monk Cardiac Center, just down the street from where I work. So what I say is that sometimes people have a perception, and I believe that actually this is fueled in part by media discourse, that going to where you pay more for something, that necessarily makes it better, but it's not actually borne out by the evidence on outcomes. And what we've found is that actually working within the single payer system, we can reorganize things. You know, I waited more than 30 minutes at the security line to get into this building today. And when I arrived in the lobby, I noticed across the hall that there was a second entry point with no lineup whatsoever. Sometimes it's not actually about the amount of resources that you have, but rather about how you organize people in order to use your queues most effectively. And that's what we're working to do, because we believe that when you try to address wait times, you should do it in a way that benefits everyone, not just people who can afford to pay.
You see why I love a lot of the stuff that's on Facebook? I mean, boy, oh boy. She decimated him without laying a finger on him. And I tell you, you've got your perceptions, but what's happening is a lot of sick people are really being ripped off. So, Judy, let's show them how they're getting ripped off for just a bag of salt water. Clip number 11, please. They're charging over $500 for IV bags. You believe this? And it's just a bag of sterilized salt water. The cost of IV therapy and administration can be almost 1,000 times the cost. It'll drive everybody crazy. And that's one reason. America uses hundreds of millions of IV bags each year. But it doesn't have to be this way. In France, hospitals only charge $4.73. It's time to stop ripping off sick people. Guys, it boils down to putting people before profits. That's all. That's all. I mean, when you can soak people, when you can rip off the average guy by charging them exorbitant prices, it's going to come back to you. And speaking of coming back to you, you guys remember Martin Shkreli, the kid that took the drug and he upped the price by 5,000%? Well, guys, sometimes I really believe there is a God, because the payback can be a real bitch. So, Judy, let's see what happened to Martin Shkreli with clip 12, please.
A bad day for the one-time bad boy of the pharmaceutical industry. Martin Shkreli gained infamy raising the price of an AIDS drug 5,000% 2 years ago.
Are you going to change the price?
No.
Becoming the CEO Americans love to hate.
Right in the nose.
I intend to use the advice of my counsel, not yours.
But that's not why he was convicted in federal court today. The 34-year-old found guilty on 3 of 8 counts related to securities fraud from when Shkreli ran a couple of hedge funds.
No questions from CNBC. I'm sorry.
Shkreli was characteristically defiant and unapologetic after the verdict.
This was a witch hunt of epic proportions, and maybe they found 1 or 2 broomsticks, but at the end of the day, we've been acquitted of the most important charges in this case.
The prosecution team, who Shkreli castigated as junior varsity, took the high road.
Justice has been served.
Defense attorney Benjamin Brafman acknowledged Shkreli's personal behavior and image made his job and the jury's more difficult.
And if you're asking me, did that factor into the decision whether or not to bring this lawsuit? I think it did.
The 4-week trial was unusual. Shkreli never put on a defense, in part because none of the victims lost money. They actually made money, even though Shkreli lied about the fund's performance and assets.
My investors made 3 to 5 times their money without any aid of any settlement agreements.
Brafman thinks that will help at sentencing. However, Shkreli's YouTube performance after the verdict may not.
Big rolls. Big rolls. That's my rap name now. No, that's my prison name. Big rolls.
He faces up to 20 years and is expected to appeal. Ann Thompson, NBC News, New York.
So they're going to lock him up for greed, right? Well, you know what? There's a lot of people that are getting locked up, and this stuff is just starting to happen. But one of my favorites is a guy that's now going to be sitting on the other side of the fence. And I'm sure you guys have heard this before. But our buddy Sheriff Joe Arpaio from Arizona, he's facing a contempt charge, and guys, sometimes I really believe there is a God, because he's got to go to jail. That's right. But Judy, let's prove my point with clip number 13, please. He's a convicted criminal.
This is a man, when we talk about borders, this is a man that believes in borders. He's tough, he's strong, and he's smart, and he's done an amazing job.
Ignoring a judge's order to stop racially profiled
I'm here to endorse
that?
a great patriot, and it's just easy to endorse him because everything I believe in, he's doing, and he's going to do it when he becomes president.
Look at those two. Boy, if they don't look like criminals,
I
huh?
love Sheriff Joe.
Guys, if that wasn't a perfect scene, but you know what? Nobody is above the law. Nobody. And Elizabeth Warren is the one that'll prove this with clip number 14. Judy?
Now is the time to remind Donald Trump that our government is not a plaything to make him richer or a servant to do his bidding. Now is the time to remind him our intelligence secrets are not gossip, and that his personal desire to impress his Russian buddies does not outweigh the safety, security, and lives of Americans and our allies. Now is the time to remind him that in this country, no one is above the law, including the President of the United States.
Guys, there's only one thing that you could say about Trump. He's a good liar in chief. And just watch how he contradicts himself and makes a fool out of himself constantly, sometimes in the same sentence. So, Judy, while we're on a roll, let's have clip 15, please.
Believe me, there won't be time to go on vacations. There won't be time to go golfing all the time.
If I get elected president, I'm going to be in the White House a lot. I'm not
Yeah,
leaving.
that's why he's in New Jersey for 17 days now.
But if I were in the White House, I don't ever think I'd see anything. I just...
Kurt, you give us some volume?
And work my off, make great deals, right? Who's going to leave? Who's going to leave?
You. Blame it on Obama.
I will not be taking very long vacations if I take them at all. There's no time for vacation.
Yeah, no
If you're in
time.
the White House and you have
No
so much
time.
work to do, why do you fly so? Why do you leave so much?
And honestly, Obama ought to get off the golf course and get down there.
And we shouldn't leave town until this is complete, until this bill is on my desk.
What about vacations? You're not going to take any vacations? You've said that.
We have so much work, so I don't think we'll be very big on vacations now.
You know, he's not even a good liar. That's what bothers me. And you know, like Uncle Joe, he doesn't care. Rich, I don't care what he says or does. He's our liar. He's working for me. Right, Uncle Joey? I tell you. But you know, guys, a lot of times, you know, we really give Fox the business. The Foxstitutes on Fox News, they just never seem to stop. And, oh, guys, we might have time. If we have time, we're going to show you that Eric Bolling got suspended from Fox for posting, he sent pictures of himself to other women. Oh, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. Roger Ailes got fired, Bill O'Reilly. There was Ed Henry. He was suspended, but I think he was cleared. They got the big black guy. He's suspended. Now, what do you got to be, a sex pervert to work for Fox News? But guys, I'll tell you what. You want to shut Fox News up? There's one way to do it. Sue them. Do what Trump always does to everybody. Sue them. So, Judy, let's have clip number 16, please.
Fox News has been named in a defamation and discrimination lawsuit brought forth by contributor Rod Wheeler. In it, Wheeler claims FoxNews.com reporter Malia Zimmerman fabricated quotes from him in a story about the death of DNC staffer Seth Rich. Wheeler's lawsuit claims Fox News worked alongside the White House and a wealthy Republican donor, Ed Butowski, to erroneously link Rich's death to WikiLeaks. The White House press secretary was asked about the lawsuit this afternoon.
The president had no knowledge of the story, and it's completely untrue that he or the White House involvement in the story.
Fox News President Jay Wallace released this statement in response to the suit. Quote, the accusation that FoxNews.com published Malia Zimmerman's story to help detract from coverage of the Russia collusion issue is completely erroneous. The retraction of this story is still being investigated internally, and we have no evidence that Rod Wheeler was misquoted by Zimmerman. Additionally, Fox News vehemently denies the race discrimination claims in the lawsuit. The dispute between Zimmerman and Rod Wheeler has nothing to do with race.
You know, guys, Fox News always wants you to look over here so you don't see what's going on over here. And they do it religiously. And anytime something questionable comes up, what do they automatically default to? They blame it on Obama or they blame it on Hillary. That's why I say they got Obama on the brain, because it just doesn't go away. But the next clip, they don't want anybody to look at what's going on with Russia, so they try to use the Hillary distractions. And guys, let's have a little fun with the way they try to give us the old double reverse with clip number 17. Judy?
The Russia story is a total fabrication. It's just an excuse for the greatest loss in the history of American politics. That's all it is. It just makes them feel better when they have nothing else to talk about. What the prosecutors should be looking at are Hillary Clinton's 33,000 deleted emails. Most people know there were no Russians in our campaign. There never were. We didn't win because of Russia. We won because of you. That I can tell you. The reason why Democrats only talk about the totally made-up Russia story is because they have no message, no agenda, and no vision.
Yep, the Democrats have nothing. Nothing at all. And guys, I tell you, you know, it gets to the point where it's Uncle Joey. He keeps telling me, he goes, I can't wait till they go to jail. I said, Joe, we already went through this Benghazi thing. You had Hillary on a stand for 11 hours. Howdy Gowdy had her sitting there for 11 hours, and she made him look stupid. But this is what goes through your mind. You can't get off the subject. You don't want to face what Trump is doing, so what do? Blame it on Obama, blame it on Hillary. Where's her 33,000 emails? Does anybody really care? You know? But guys, the next clip, we're going to show you how the Republican Party and how they use the deception and how they go out of their way to mislead the people. And you're going to watch this Republican senator, and he almost starts laughing at like one point going, hey, you got me. What do you want me to say? I know I'm a party of the stupid people, but hey, I'm making a living doing it. So Judy, let's prove my point, and let's show how this guy contradicts himself on the border wall with clip number 18, please.
Would pay for it. Let's watch together.
I don't think anyone during the campaign seriously thought that Mexico would pay for that wall, even though we all desperately believe in the wall as a metaphor for border security.
Nobody believed Mexico would pay. The wall was a metaphor. Do you believe that the crowds at President Trump's rallies believed when they were shouting, build that wall, they were supporting a metaphor instead of a traditional brick and mortar cement wall?
Well, there's an element in the border where the wall, brick and mortar wall, is appropriate. There are also other elements that need to be brought to bear on policing the border, like technology. What I said during the campaign, and those very people you're talking about, I think understood that we need to combine the wall with technology, and we need to do all that we can do to secure the border. There are areas where the Rio Grande, west of Brownsville, is very narrow, that might lend itself to a wall better than places where it's wide. There are places where there's private property which don't lend itself to a wall right on the river, but lend itself to a wall elsewhere. And then across the land border through New Mexico and Arizona, it lends itself to a wall all the way across.
True, and you know what you're offering to this conversation is nuance. But we didn't hear that from the president. In fact, let's remind people of what the president said. We've heard you say that this was a metaphor. Here's what the president said the wall would be.
And it's going to be a real wall. It's going to be a high wall. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a wall that works.
It's going to be made of hardened concrete, and it's going to be made out of rebar. And we're going to set them in nice, heavy foundations.
In order to get the wall started, Mexico will pay for the wall.
On day one, we will begin working on an impenetrable, physical, tall, powerful, beautiful
wall,
southern border wall. And Mexico will pay for the wall.
Oh, thank you.
I will
Thank
build
you.
a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
And you know what? Let's follow this up with your own promise to voters when you ran for the seat
Look
you
at him. He
currently
looks
hold.
like he's going to start
You're in the
laughing,
construction
doesn't he?
business.
You got me.
appeared in your own ad with a safety vest and a construction helmet there, a hat. Here's what you
can
said
laugh.
about the wall.
You got caught, that's all.
I'm Francis Rooney. I work in the construction industry, so I know a thing or two about building walls. In Congress, I'll fight to build a big one on our southern border.
So is this metaphor talk now just an excuse for the inability to get the wall started in the first 6 months?
No, I think, first of all, like I said, there are areas where a big wall will be part of the solution. There are also areas where we need something different than a wall, or we need a wall that's removed a bit from the Rio Grande. But the metaphor part is that there's a broad-based feeling of frustration and insecurity all across our country over what's happened with terrorism and people crossing our border and our broken visa system that half the people in this country came in legally and overstayed that we need to fix. That's what I mean about the metaphor is a small word, wall, for a big problem, border security and individual security.
The president also has said before the inauguration and since the inauguration that Mexico will pay for the wall. Do you believe that?
No, I don't think Mexico will pay for the wall. I think he was maybe speaking in a campaign hyperbole or whatever, but I don't think Mexico will pay for the wall.
He was speaking in what? I had a producer in my ear. Could you repeat that? He was speaking in what?
It could be just campaign words, you know.
But campaign words are the basis for which or on which that voters selected Donald Trump. So are we now supposed to dismiss the promise that Mexico will pay for the wall? That's why potentially some people voted for him.
Well, I don't know if they voted for him because of who was going to pay for it, or they voted for him because they wanted to see our border strengthened and bring security back to the American people. That's what I get back towards this broader metaphor idea.
So those were just campaign words? You mean Trump bamboozled everyone and the simple folk all bought it? So he was conning them the whole time? He lied to them and deceived them? And guys, you know, earlier we talked about the think tank that Drew Johnson is the senior fellow member for the conservative think tank, the National Policy Analysis. Well, guys, this is from the mother of all think tanks. This is from the Heritage Foundation. And watch what the Heritage Foundation wants the Trump supporters to walk away with in the early part of Trump's presidency. So, Judy, let's have, I believe it's clip number 20, please. He's promoting the GDP is up, unemployment, the Dow, all those good things have happened, right? And this is all the things that Uncle Donnie has done for everybody. Morton's been successful when he went abroad, met his first real crisis with poised, sober leadership. Is he going to pray away global warming? Trump has achieved several policy successes. What? He has repealed 14 of President Obama's signature regulations. That's an achievement? Wow. So we got a Supreme Court justice appointed. Big deal. And guys, just look at the end. Look at the upper right-hand corner. The Heritage Foundation with their logo. And guys, this is what they do. And this is the way they just want to brainwash the simple folk. And guys, the next clip, I'm surprised Uncle Joey's not here. But what? The guy with the t-shirt of him hugging Donald Trump, this guy could be Uncle Joey. So guys, let's take a look what a potential New Jersey Uncle Joey looks like with clip number 21, please.
Oh, but see your T-shirt that you're wearing, that's you hugging Donald Trump. What's the story behind it?
This was on February 18th at the Melbourne rally. He literally called me up on the stage. I had to jump over the fence, break through Secret Service, and I ran up and I gave our president a man hug, and this is what it turned into. And I was able to speak in front of the millions of people, and it was a wonderful day. President Trump has changed my life, and the promises that he's made, he's doing them.
Such as?
Well, let's think about as in with
such as
But what promises has he made to you that he's kept?
Well, let's think about it. Thank you for that. The Paris Agreement. He got out of that. He wants to repeal and replace Obamacare. That's in the works.
I had hoped that you would grow into the position that that he would surround himself with people that understand how politics works. But he's his own worst enemy, and sometimes just you got to have that 30-second filter. Just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it or tweet it.
And talking about the tweeting, our president told us he's the modern day president. There you go. To me, I love his tweets. I think he can tweet every morning. I actually can't wake up in the morning to see him.
What do you love about that?
Yes, because he talks to us. He's talking to we the people.
Do you think he ever crosses the line?
No, at all. I don't think he does.
Guys, it doesn't matter. The loyalty, like the one guy said, Trump could get up and take a dump on the desk and people would wipe his butt. That's the lawyer. That's the way Uncle Joey is, too. He doesn't care. As long as they got an R after their name, that's all he cares about. And I tell you, sometimes some of these people that support Trump, I think they might have a little PTSD or maybe something a little bit more wrong with them. But guys, there's some solutions to some of these problems, and there's one town specifically that's going to be going to pot. So, Judy, hey guys, this is someplace where you might want to consider moving to. So, Judy, let's have clip number 22, please.
New at 6, a Southern California town is set to become a marijuana destination. According to Bloomberg, cannabis company American Green Incorporated has bought the entire town of Nipton for $5 million. Their goal, to turn the entire town into a pot-friendly tourist spot, all powered by renewable energy. The company even plans to infuse the water with CBD. It's a chemical found in cannabis that doesn't get you high and many believe has medical benefits.
A pot-friendly tourist town. Sounds like my type of vacation. But guys, the next clip is, when are we going to make weed legal? And, the next politician, and I tell you, he just did a beautiful job up here, and this is Cory Booker, and we're going to play what he has to say, and just think about how logical it'll be to really make weed legal for the whole country. So, Judy, clip number 23, please.
I've introduced a bill to legalize marijuana on the federal level and do what is necessary to begin to heal the savage effects of the war on drugs in so many of our communities. The war on drugs we've seen now for 30, 40 plus years has really been a war on people, on poor people, on minorities, on those who are addicted to drugs or mentally ill, even our veterans. And so my legislation focuses on a number of things. First and foremost, to deschedule marijuana, to no longer make it an illegal controlled substance. Number two is we should expunge the records of those people who've been arrested, been charged, been convicted, and are out now. Number three, it allows people that are in jail for marijuana-related crimes to petition the judge for resentencing. This bill for marijuana would say if you are in a state that has a disproportionate impact of your marijuana enforcement on poor people or minorities, we're going to incentivize you to stop doing that. We're creating reinvestment funds for things like job training and reentry and things that can actually heal and begin to repair communities. States like Washington and Colorado have legalized marijuana, and they've actually seen violent crime go down. They've seen revenue in their states coming in. We on the federal government should do the right thing and help to not only end the prohibition of marijuana, but also invest in our communities so we make them stronger, more economically vibrant, more fair, and more just. Please join with me. Support this legislation. Let's make marijuana legal, but let's also invest in undoing the damage done by a war gone horribly wrong.
Guys, on our last show, we showed in Colorado how they've made a profit of over $500 million. They're building new schools, employing people building new schools. They're giving homeless people places to live, and they're educating people. So you can see that, marijuana, and believe me, a lot of people that are on some of these opiates can really benefit from marijuana. But guys, the next clip we're going to play is a sheriff who took off his badge and got into the pot growing business. Why? Because he figures if you can't beat him, you might as well join him. So Judy, what we'll do is we'll play this clip, and then we'll come back to me when there's about 30 seconds, and we'll roll the credits, okay? So let's have clip number 24, please.
Looking at a plant that you've never grown before, there's no real way to know how much THC is going to be in it. Many farms, all they're shooting for is how high a THC number I can get, which leads us into the situation with labs padding numbers. And actually, we've been approached by labs that are a little bit more unscrupulous than others, saying, hey, this tested at 14%, but we can fix that if you like it. Throw us a little extra cash, we'll fix it.
Testing for potency and purity is becoming the norm in states with legal weed. But there are concerns within the industry about corruption between growers and the labs that test their products.
So you basically went from busting pot growers and dealers to being one yourself?
Correct, yeah.
In 2012, Griffin Lott left his job as a sheriff's deputy in Texas. He now works as a grower in Washington State's booming legal cannabis industry. But even after switching teams, he's still a stickler for playing by the rules. Lott thinks some growers are colluding with labs to fudge their test results.
THC is the thing in marijuana that gets you high.
Yep.
What are you seeing with customers in terms of what they look for when they go to a store and see the THC readout on the packaging?
They like to see THC contents at 20% and higher. It's the equivalent of going to the liquor store and finding the highest proof alcohol and just buying it based on that.
Crooked testing also hurts labs that want to be honest. Charlie Town, a manager at Goat Labs in Washington State, says growers have pressured him to inflate the THC content of their pot.
So do you have clients come in who are blatantly saying, we need this to test a certain rate, make it happen?
I've had one phone call before that somebody was shopping around for a laboratory, and they even used that term. And I turned them away. I don't want anything to deal with them.
Do you think that was a random, like one guy was shopping around, or do you get the sense that that's happening more often than not?
I think that's happening more often than not.
To demonstrate the problem, Charlie retested a jar of cannabis that was advertised as being especially potent.
So, what are the results from your test?
It claims that it was 30% THC, and we just tested it and ran it, and it's 18.9% THC.
And there's no way that that's a rounding error or some sort of calibration. That's just flat out false results.
That's false results.
Some people might think, oh, what's the harm? Why does it matter if somebody's inflating numbers just a little bit?
To me, it's about integrity. I mean, again, we're a new and burgeoning industry. We want to be on the up and up. If they're willing to fudge potency numbers, who's to say that they're not willing to fudge pesticide or mold or mildew contaminant numbers? The two biggest ones in the industry are Eagle 20 and Avid. Those are both neurotoxins. They're basically chemical weapons, okay? This is stuff that's sprayed on plants routinely in the agricultural world, but they're not for human consumption. Black mold, the same thing. People smoke that, they end up with a disastrous lung infection that can actually end up killing them.
Is there anybody from the state coming in to make sure that when you test your samples that it's going to come back accurate on THC content?
It's not anything that's done on a regular basis. We do proficiency tests within the lab.
So if you do it right once, the state doesn't check back to make sure that you're doing it every time?
It's really the honor system right now.
Washington is considering tightening its rules. A spokesman for the state said a secret shopper program provides oversight of the labs, and it has turned up deviations in testing results, which they are investigating. The problem isn't limited to just Washington. 8 states and Washington, D.C. have passed recreational marijuana laws. An additional 21 states have some form of medical marijuana. The lab rules vary from state to state, and some require no testing at all. This can be a serious issue for patients who need precise doses and pot that's free of pesticides and mold.
Do you worry at the national level? Is there a federal debate that's happening right now about whether or not the country should change its marijuana laws, that this kind of deception is going to influence people's decision on the issue?
Certainly. In other industries like, meat, dairy, that kind of thing, you have agencies like the USDA that are testing those products on a national level. They have a national standard for testing all of those products for every state. That's honestly what we need in the marijuana world, is have one way of testing every marijuana product that is consumed by the public in any state that it might be.
Boy, Judy's really got that crawl and that timing down, huh? How much time do we have, Kurt? Guys, we'll see you next. Oh, we wanted to play the Al Gore movie, but it's been pushed ahead 1 week. So next week will be an Inconvenient Truth Part 2. We'll see you then. Goodbye.